Thank you for that nice discourse, Brother Olson. A lot of nice points for us to follow, and want to make sure to maintain that friendship. We invite all back next week for another discourse. Brother Scott Greenewalt from the Ames congregation will be here. The title of his talk, Trust in the God of All Comfort. Now let's give our attention to Brother Olson and the Watchtower study.
Well, welcome to the second part of our meeting this morning. I invite you to stand once again. We'll open up with a song for our Watchtower. 134 has been assigned for us to sing. Song 134 is entitled Children Are Gifts from God. Song 134. How can family heads decide which language congregation the family will attend? And how can others help immigrant parents and their children? So, some good thoughts. Invite your comments this morning. Let's get started. Brother Norland's going to read for us paragraphs 1 and 2 to begin with, please.
From infancy, I spoke my immigrant parents' language at home and in the congregation, relates Joshua. But after I started school, I began to prefer the local language. Within a few years, the shift was complete. I couldn't understand the meanings, and I didn't identify with my parents' culture. Joshua's experience is not uncommon. Today, more than 240 million people live outside the land of their birth. If you are an immigrant parent, how can you give your children the best possible opportunity to become spiritual children who can go on walking in the truth? And how can others help?
So what problem do many immigrant children experience? Brother Skinner?
Well, one problem was after they started to learn the local language, they preferred it, and then when they would go to the meetings, they couldn't understand the meeting, and then after time, it points out that they found it very difficult to identify with their parents' culture because there's another culture.
Yeah. And how big of a problem is this? The paragraph brings out there. Sister Herky?
Well, there are more than 240 million people who live outside the land of their birth, so it's a big problem.
Yeah, so a lot of people are in this situation, and so it affects many, many people. But what questions will this article discuss? Brother Holmes?
Well, the question it would be, what are these immigrant parents going to do about this? Because they've got children living in the country, they're speaking one language at school, one language at home. So how can they help make wise decisions for their children and encourage them so that they can continue, especially to stay servants of Jehovah?
Yes, thank you. Good. Yeah, Sister Wilkinson.
And then also, too, something would involve all of us is how can we help such children?
Yep, so two good questions here. So let's get to the first part here about parents. Set a good example. Let's see what paragraphs 3 and 4 have to say.
Parents, your example is essential to start your children on the path to endless life. When your children see you seeking first the kingdom, they learn to depend on Jehovah for their daily needs. So live modestly. Sacrifice material things for spiritual benefits, not the other way around. Strive to stay out of debt. Seek treasure in heaven, Jehovah's approval, and not riches or the glory of men. Never get so busy that you do not have time for your children. Let them know that you are proud of them when they decide to put Jehovah first instead of seeking prestige or riches for themselves or for you. Avoid the unchristian view that children should provide their parents with a life of ease. Remember, children are not expected to save up for their parents, but the parents for their children.
So let's go to our verse here, first of all, to keep this in mind before we ask our question. Mark 10 and verses 21 and 22. Sister Blanco.
Jesus looked at him and felt love for him and said, "One thing is missing about you. Go sell what things you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come be my follower." But he grew sad at the answer and went away grieved, for he had many possessions.
All right, thank you. So let's keep those verses in mind. We're going to refer back to them. How can parents set a good example for their children? Mia?
Seeking first the kingdom.
That's right. And Abraham?
To depend on Jehovah for their daily needs, like resource to Joe a priority.
Yes, very true. Good. And Sister Words?
So Jehovah has told us to live modestly, and it says we should sacrifice material things for spiritual things. So staying out of debt, then we can strive for the greater treasures.
Yeah. If we go back to that verse there, Mark, what was the man's challenge or difficulty that he was facing there? Sister Olson?
He had a lot of material things, and those were apparently his priority at the time.
Yes, that's true. And Sister Words?
That rich young ruler that it's talking about, he asked Jesus what he had to do to get life, and he should have listened to Jesus' advice, but the material things got in his way.
Yeah. Sister Norland?
Because he had that wrong outlook, it cost him the spiritual blessings. So as parents, we don't want that to be the case, that we set our children up for spiritual failure, but want them to succeed and have the real benefits of having real life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good.
And if we remember last week, the excellent example of the father who little by little taught his son to take things out of his backpack, and once it was empty, then he said, now you have everything that you need. So I'm sure the father had already purged things that was in his, so we see how important that example is. It's not do what I say, but it's see what I do.
What should a parent never do, or what should they always do? And there's a couple things in paragraph 4 that really highlight the importance of this situation here. Sister Olson.
Well, if we put ourselves in this situation, making a living and earning some money is a priority to try to take care of your family, because you may have left everything behind. But it's still important to do all those things that the friends have mentioned, and to never be too busy to give time to your children, not just the material things.
Mm-hmm. Good. And what goes a long way with a young one, with a child? Sister Dowdy?
Paragraph brings out just to let them know how proud you are when you see them deciding to put Jehovah first over material possessions. So commend them.
Yeah, very nice. Yep, and that can be easily done with a lot of things, can't it? So what about our B part? What should parents not expect of their children? Brother Bear.
They should expect their children to seek a career of prominence, or maybe even higher education to get a better job, but to put Jehovah first.
Certainly. Brother Holmes?
And in many cultures, people want to have a lot of children so that the children can take care of them in their old age. But that's not what the Bible teaches, because we see scripture there from 2 Corinthians says really that the parents take care of their children. And so we want to avoid the idea that we want to have our children give us a life of ease in retirement.
Yes, thank you. Sister Words.
We know the scripture does say that if the parents are older and needy, the children should exercise taking care of that. But that doesn't mean that the ones that are needy need to have great things. They just need helped out a little bit. They don't expect unchristian view of having plenty from, it has, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's good. So we see how the parents can set that example as our self-heading brings out, putting spiritual things first, and hopefully the children can see that good example. Let's take a look at another challenge here. Parents bridge the language barrier. Another thing that comes up here, number 5.
As foretold, the people out of all the languages of the nations are flocking to Jehovah's organization. But a language barrier can make it difficult for you to teach your children the truth. Your children are the most important Bible students you will ever have, and they're coming to know Jehovah means their eternal life. In order for your children to learn Jehovah's teachings, you must speak of them on all appropriate occasions.
Deuteronomy 6 and 7, please, before we ask the question. Sister Thiessen.
These words that I am commanding you today must be on your heart, and you must inculcate them in your sons, and speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up.
All right, thank you. So why must parents speak with their children about Jehovah? Sister Holmes.
Our children are an inheritance from Jehovah, and so they're coming to know him, gaining eternal life really is the most important thing we ever do for them.
Yes, very true. Sam?
It means their life.
That it does, very true. That's an important thing, isn't it? Sister Olson.
Like was brought out in the talk today, we just don't automatically develop a friendship or a relationship with Jehovah just because we might be sitting here in the Kingdom Hall. So it takes some effort, and really our children are the most important Bible student that we will ever have. So we really want to focus and do what we can to help them.
And our verses in Deuteronomy there help us to see, like, when is the best time to talk to our children. Sister Norland.
It doesn't work the best just to have a few big conversations in life, but it's really lots of time spent with our children talking about Jehovah throughout everyday aspects of life that really have the greatest impact, because they'll see it's our way of life.
Yes, very true. So we see the importance of that, especially in this situation with the language barrier. Let's continue with number 6.
Your children will likely learn the local language in school and in their environment, but they learn your language primarily by frequently interacting with you in your language. Besides enabling your children to have heart-to-heart conversations with you, knowing your language gives them other advantages. Being bilingual sharpens your children's thinking ability and enhances their social skills. It may also open opportunities for them to expand their ministry. Being in a foreign language congregation has been fun, says Carolina, whose parents are immigrants, and it's cool to be helping them where there is a great need.
How may your children benefit from learning your language? We have our opening picture to refer to as well. Sister Christine Olson.
Besides being able to have a heart-to-heart conversation with their parents, it can also help with sharpening their thinking abilities, their social skills, and then also they can use that for opportunity to expand their ministry.
Good. But how has that helped? How is that seen in our picture there? Sister Wilkinson.
Well, oftentimes when individuals settle, they settle in groups in the new territory or their new place where they're found a home. And so there's going to be that field and that native language for that young person. And this is what we see being depicted here. That young one has a language, and is now bilingual, and so we had to share with others out in the ministry. But the interesting part is that child is going to learn the local language, just it's almost automatically. They're going to pick it up, but it is going to take work on the part of the parent to make that child bilingual. But it is so worth the effort.
Let's continue to number 7.
Yet as children of immigrants assimilate to local culture and language, some of them may lose much of their desire and even their ability to communicate with their parents in their parents' mother tongue. Parents, if that describes your children, can you learn at least some of your local language? You will be in a much better position to raise your children as Christians if you understand their conversations, entertainment, and schoolwork, and if you can communicate directly with their teachers. Granted, learning a new language takes time, effort, and humility, but if your child somehow became deaf, would you not try to learn sign language in order to communicate with him? A child who communicates best in another spoken language deserves the same concern. Would you not agree?
What can you do if there's a language barrier in your family? There.
Learn at least some local language.
Yes, that's true. That will help, won't it? Brother Skinner?
Like how the paragraph brought out, if your child became deaf, you wouldn't just want to just leave to somebody else to teach your child and let them carry on in a sign language congregation. You would want to learn sign, at least some, to be able to communicate with them so you can share messages of truth with each other.
So they're actually helping the parents in this situation. They're encouraging them to learn a little bit of the language, because then what happens? Sister Herky?
Well, if the parent learns a little bit of the local language, then they're in a better position to help raise their children as Christians, because they'll begin to understand their conversations, they'll understand their entertainment and schoolwork, and then they can also communicate directly with their teachers.
Yes, because if that doesn't happen, if they can't understand their conversations or what they're doing with schoolwork or entertainment, then what happens? Sister April.
It can almost be like they're living in 2 separate worlds, even though they're in the same home. So it's important then that they stay involved in their child's life, understand what they're dealing with, so they're in a better position to be able to help them and support them and understand what they're going through and adapt things spiritually to them.
Yeah, there's even a thing, an article or news thing on one of the internet pages, the Yahoo page, was for parents, do you understand text language for your children? Because if you don't, you may not know what's going on at all. Right? And so we can kind of see a little bit, relate a little bit how these parents are going through with their children, with all the different lingo and abbreviations and all that stuff. We can see how the communication thing would be very difficult. But then when they understand it, then what happens? Just like our theme verse here. Then what can really happen once a parent who comes to understand a little more of the language, a little more of their conversations, what can happen? Brother Holmes?
Well, you're really helping the chance that your children are going to thrive in the truth and stick with the truth.
That's right, yes. And that's what, as parents, they want, and others around them as well. So, some good things there. Let's continue with number 8.
Realistically, it may not be possible for some immigrant parents to become fluent in their children's new language. The resulting barrier may make it hard for parents to impart to their children a deep knowledge of the Holy Writings. If that is your situation, you can still help your children to come to know and love Jehovah. Our single mom's grasp of the language we understood best was limited, and my sisters and I didn't speak her language very well, recalls an elder named Shan. But when we saw her studying, praying, and doing her best to conduct family worship every week, we understood that getting to know Jehovah was very important.
How can you help your children if your language ability is limited? Sister Marquise Olson.
Even if a parent isn't able to speak the language well, their actions can still speak volumes. Because they set a good example of keeping a good spiritual routine, their children will no doubt see how much they love Jehovah, and that it's also important for them to get to know Him personally.
Let's continue with number 9.
Some children may need to learn about Jehovah in 2 languages, their school language and the language that is spoken at home. To that end, some parents make use of printed literature, audio recordings, and videos in both languages. Clearly, immigrant parents must devote more time and show more initiative in order to help their children develop a strong relationship with Jehovah.
How can parents help children who may need to study in 2 languages? Brother here, please.
Immigrant parents must devote more time and show more initiative in order to help their children develop a strong relationship with Jehovah.
That's it, isn't it? Very good. And Sister Wilkinson?
You think about an individual out in the territory, you find someone that doesn't speak your language, but they're sincere in wanting to learn about Jehovah. That's exactly what we do. They use their language, we use ours, but oftentimes we very much share both languages. And so in studying with children as parents who have the 2 language barrier, it'd be very much the same thing, because here's another Bible student that needs to learn about Jehovah. There's the language barrier, but Jehovah is so lovingly provided that in the printed material, in the videos, and all kinds of aids so that that can be accomplished.
That's right, yes. And as the organization continues to have more and more languages, why is it so important? Because it says some children may need to learn about Jehovah in 2 languages. Why would that even be the case? What do we know the motivation behind making sure you learn about Jehovah in the right language? Sister Nickerson?
Because the goal is not just to have the right answer when you're here at the meeting, but it is to learn about Jehovah and to develop that faith, and that is the parent's role. And so it is good that we're constantly being fed this information every week here at the meeting, so it's good to be well prepared and to participate, but then also the parents want to be able to have that heart-to-heart conversation so that their children can get that friendship with Jehovah.
Yeah, that's right. And Sister Olson?
And really, if you learn the truth in your own language, it reaches your heart, so you're going to be more motivated to act upon that. And really, some of the quotations from individuals that have just recently gotten literature or things in their own language, they said, well, this is the first time I understood the truth. This is, I get it now. So really, that's very important to have that information in their own language.
Yeah, very important, isn't it? Sister Herky.
So some children need to are learn in 2 different languages. They learn in their school language and they learn in their natural language, but this takes a lot more time. And parents must devote more time, show more initiative in order to help the kids develop a relationship with Jehovah.
Yeah, so we see how important that is with that language barrier, but how fulfilling that is when they learn about Jehovah in that main language that they want. All right, let's continue with to which language congregation should you belong, number 10.
When foreign residents live far from other witnesses who speak their language, they need to associate with a local language congregation. But if there's a congregation nearby that uses your mother tongue, the question arises, which language congregation is best for your family? After careful thought and prayer in consultation with his mate and children, a family head must decide. What factors will the family head take into consideration? What principles apply? Let us consider some.
So who must decide which language congregation to attend? Fair?
A family head.
That's right, but what should he do before making a decision? Sister Ayala.
Before that decision, they would talk with their mate and their children and take their thoughts into consideration and also look for Bible principles that would apply.
Yeah, so how important that is, right? In making that decision, let's consider some of those things to consider, 11 and 12.
Parents must evaluate their children's needs realistically. Of course, regardless of language, to gain a firm grasp of the truth, a child needs much more than just a few hours of spiritual education each week at meetings. But consider this. At meetings conducted in the language they understand best, children may absorb instruction simply by being present, perhaps learning more than their parents realize. That may not be the case when children do not fully understand the language. And a child's native language will not necessarily remain the language of his mind or even of his heart. In fact, some children can learn to give comments, presentations, and talks in their parents' language without the words really coming from their heart. Furthermore, a child's heart is influenced by more than just language. That was the case with Joshua, quoted at the outset. As his sister Esther notes, to young children, their parents' language, culture, and religion come bundled together. If children do not identify with their parents' culture, they may resist learning their parents' language and their faith. What can immigrant parents do?
So how does language affect what a child absorbs at meetings? Sister Olson?
Well, even if we don't know it, sometimes the children absorb more instruction than we realize just by being here if the language is in the one that they can best understand.
Let's go to our verse here in 1 Corinthians, just to highlight that point. 1 Corinthians 14, 9, and 11. Sister Holmes?
In the same way, unless you with the tongue use speech that is easily understood, how will anyone know what is being said? You in fact will be speaking into the air. For if I do not understand the sense of the speech, I will be a foreigner to the one speaking, and the one speaking will be a foreigner to me.
All right, thank you. So what are these verses helping us to understand here in regards to this challenge that we're talking about? Sister Wertz?
That a person needs to have a language that affects their heart. And like it says here, it may not be the native language that remains the language of a person's mind and heart.
Yes. Brother Holmes?
Well, we can imagine sitting and listening to a talk where you understood about every third word real well, and the other ones you weren't quite sure about. Well, you get left in the dust. You would be confused at the end, and therefore you're not going to be learning. You're not going to be really understanding the sense of the truth, and that's going to be discouraging, and you're probably going to give that up.
Yeah, right, exactly. Sister Olson?
And speaking from personal experience, that is definitely the case. When I was first trying to learn Pohnpeian and we sat through the meeting, it was like I didn't even recognize every third word, and it was frustrating. And at some point, you almost begin to tune out because it's just so frustrating.
Yes. So we see that the difficulties there that come up. What can anybody do in regards to meetings, or even in this instance, anybody can do what in regards to meetings? Sister Wilkinson?
One can always take and use knowledge and give a talk or comments or whatever, but that may never touch the heart. It's just words they know how to use them. So there's a real difference from being able to give that talk or that comment from the heart than just using the mind's knowledge.
Yeah. And that brings to mind, who does that remind us of? For those that, well, they can give comments, and they can give talks and demonstrations. Well, that reminds us of other religions. They just do it by rote, right? They can just do that. But what's missing? Well, we see from the heart there. So that's an important factor there. But why do some children resist learning their parents' language? Be part there. Sister Lily Norman.
Sometimes for young children, their parents' language, culture, and religion seem to be bundled together. So if they don't identify with their parents' culture, they could reject everything else.
Yeah. So there's the danger and challenge again, right, in regards to teaching the young ones. Let's continue with number 13 and 14.
Christian parents put their children's spiritual well-being ahead of personal preferences. Joshua and Esther's father Samuel relates, "My wife and I observed our children to see in which language they thrive spiritually, and we prayed for wisdom. The answer was not what we personally found convenient, but when we saw that they were getting little benefit from the meetings in our language, we decided to move to the local language congregation. Together, we regularly attended meetings and shared the ministry. We also invited local friends to join us for meals and excursions. All of this helped our children to get to know the brothers and to get to know Jehovah, not only as their God, but also as their father and friend. We considered this to be much more important than their mastering our language." Samuel adds, "To keep ourselves spiritually strong, my wife and I also attended meetings in our language. Life was very busy and we were tired, but we thanked Jehovah for blessing our efforts and sacrifices. Our 3 children are all serving Jehovah in the full-time ministry."
So why did one immigrant couple move their family to a local language congregation? Yeah.
Put their children's needs first.
Yes, that's right. And Sister Ayala.
So they were watching their children and they noticed that they weren't getting a lot of benefit from the meetings in their native language. So in order to help their kids, as Mia said, they decided to move to that local language congregation.
And what did they do on top of that to really help the situation? Brother Ayala?
Like I said, they prayed for wisdom, so they didn't rely on their own wisdom. Of course, the children is their responsibility, but they asked Jehovah for help. They weren't prideful in making the decision on their own. They asked Jehovah and they watched. After they had the wisdom and the knowledge of what was in place, then they made an educated decision.
Good. Sister Christina Olson.
They also went to the meetings with their children, sharing the ministry, and it said they even invited local friends to join the meals and excursions. So they wanted to make sure that they really got to know Jehovah and also the congregation.
Yeah, thank you. Sister April Olson.
And that wasn't the answer that they wanted. It's the interesting part. They didn't do what would be easiest for them. They were willing to make those sacrifices and put the spiritual interests of their children ahead of their own, even though it was going to be more challenging for them.
Good. So what did the parents, or how did the parents stay spiritually strong then, to be part? Sister Skinner?
They also attended meetings in their own language, even though it wasn't for them.
What would have happened if they didn't do that? A possibility, anyway. Sister Wilkinson?
There's a possibility then that they could have become spiritually weak, and that the point would have been lost. They couldn't help their children there either. So it really took a lot of sacrifice and can in order for a bilingual family to really make it work all the way around, because the children need to be spiritually strong and firm, but then so do the parents.
Yes, true. Sister Olson?
But then we see the fine results of their good example and all the sacrifices and work that they did, because he said that their 3 children are all serving Jehovah in the full-time ministry. So that was a great blessing for them, and I'm sure they appreciated that, being the spiritual people that they were.
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 10:24 highlights the parents and their feelings on the matter. What did they endeavor to do? It's been highlighted, but it's a good thing to think about, no matter what situation we're in. Sister Herky?
Well, brought out not to be seeking your own advantage, but that of the others. So this is what these parents truly did. They sought the advantage of their children before they sought their own advantage.
Yes, yeah. So we see the definite principles behind what they did and why they did it. Let's continue with our next subheading here, what young people can do. Let's read paragraph 15.
Adult children may come to realize that they could better serve Jehovah in a congregation that uses the language that they understand best. If so, their parents need not feel that their children are rejecting them. I knew the basics of my parents' language, but the language spoken at the meetings was over my head, recalls Christina. When I was 12, I attended a convention in my school language. For the first time, I understood that what I was hearing was the truth. Another turning point came when I began to pray in my school language. I could speak to Jehovah from my heart. When she reached adulthood, Christina discussed the matter with her parents and decided to move to a local language congregation. She recalls, learning about Jehovah in my school language moved me to action. Before long, Christina became a joyful, regular pioneer.
So why did a sister named Christina feel that she could do better in a local language congregation? Sister Thiessen?
Because even though she knew the basics of her parents' language, she said what was spoken at the meetings was over her head. So when she had the turning point of going to a convention where the local language was spoke, it was changed for her, because she said she was hearing the truth for the first time, and that she could speak to Jehovah from the heart, and having that, moving it, because it reached her heart, it moved her to action.
Yes. What is the example in Acts there in regards to how important that is? Sister Nickerson?
I believe that's when Jehovah's Holy Spirit was poured out, and they were able to speak in different languages. And in the scriptures it says each one was hearing their own native language. They were hearing magnificent things about God, and as a result they were moved to action, because it said 3,000 were baptized.
Yeah, that's good. So it went from, if we think about this situation, this young one, this Christina, she was only 12, all the truth at the time could have been in a different language she didn't understand. The truth could have been what to her? How could she have viewed the truth, do you think, before she went to the language she understood, Brother Holmes?
Well, it's all my parents' thing. It's their religion. It's their culture. I'm moving on.
Yeah. But then she goes to her school language, it says, and then she hears magnificent things of God, just like our verse brings out. So we see the difference there, don't we, in regards to young ones and touching the heart in that regard. So, good example there. Let's continue with number 16.
Young people, do you think that you would prefer being part of a local language congregation? If so, ask yourself why. Would moving to such a congregation help you draw closer to Jehovah? Or might you want to move because you expect to have less supervision, or less work. When my siblings and I got into our teens, we wanted to switch to the local language congregation, says Nadia, who now serves at Bethel. But her parents knew that such a move would not be in their children's best spiritual interest. Now we're grateful that our parents worked hard to teach us their language and kept us in the foreign language congregation. It has enriched our lives and broadened our opportunities to help others get to know Jehovah.
So why is a sister named Nadia get glad she stayed in the foreign language congregation? Brother Skinner.
Well, the end of the verse brought out that it enriched her life, and she had the opportunity to stay and had the opportunity to go to Jehovah and become closer to Jehovah just by doing that.
Sister Olson.
You can see the parents' close supervision of this and knowing their children, because apparently the children were wanting to move for the wrong motivation. They were maybe just seeking less supervision or less work, but the parents thought it was in the best interest of their children to keep them where they were. And so the daughter was happy that they had done that, even though at the time she might have been a little bit disgruntled with them. But it's in the long run, it really aided her to help others get to know Jehovah better.
Yep, very true. Sister April Olson.
And this helps us to see that each immigrant family in their circumstances is unique. In the previous paragraph, we saw that she excelled and did better when she went to a local language congregation. But in this instance, we see the parents' decision was different. They needed to stay in the foreign language group and worked really hard with their children to stay there. So that's why the observation and the prayer and the parents considering their children and what they need is key, because it may be two different decisions for different families.
Yep, good point. Brother Ayala.
To go off of Sister Olson's comment, at the time maybe the children wanted to go and they weren't happy that they weren't allowed to change over to the other language. But the scriptural principle here is James 4:8. Draw close to Jehovah and he'll draw close to you. So whatever language that's going to be in is the language we want to be learning in. So the parents saw that. The parents saw it, had a spiritual outlook. And even if the kids didn't like it at the time, we see the quotation there at the end of the paragraph, now we're grateful. So if they probably didn't,
Yeah, good. Let's go to our last subheading here. How others can help. Number 17.
Jehovah has assigned parents, not grandparents or anyone else, the privilege of raising their children in the truth. Still, parents who do not know the local language may need help to reach their children's heart. Arranging for such help need not mean abdicating their spiritual responsibility. Rather, it can be part of bringing up their children in the discipline and admonition of Jehovah. For example, parents may ask elders in the congregation for suggestions on conducting family worship and for help in providing good association for their children.
So let's go to our verses here. First of all, before we ask the question, whom has Jehovah assigned to raise children? Proverbs, a few verses there. Proverbs 1:8 to start with. Brother Olson. And we have chapter 31, and we have 10:27 and 28. Brother Stock.
Listen, my son, to the discipline of your father, and do not forsake the instruction of your mother.
Who can find a capable wife? Her value is far more than the most pearls. She watches over the activity of her household, and the bread of laziness she does not eat. Her children rise up and declare her happy. Her husband rises up and praises her.
All right, thank you. So, whom has Jehovah assigned to raise children? Brother Stock.
It's the responsibility of the parents, but sometimes the responsible thing might be to seek help from someone who knows the language that your children speak better.
Thank you. And so how can parents get help in teaching their children the truth? What are some things that can be done to help out? Whether it works out.
Well, they might find it advantageous to approach the elders in the congregation to get any ideas or suggestions that might help with their family worship, and even in getting association for their children that would be beneficial for them.
Yeah, good. So all good things there that can be had. Let's continue with 18 and 19.
For instance, the parents may invite other families to join them in family worship from time to time. Further, many young people thrive under the influence of spiritually balanced companions who may, for example, accompany them in the ministry and share with them in wholesome recreation. I well remember the brothers who took me under their wing, recall Shannon quoted earlier. When they helped me with student talk assignments, I always learned more, and I enjoyed the leisure activities we shared in as a group. Of course, those whom the parents choose to help their children should always build up the young ones' respect for their parents, speaking positively about them, not taking away their responsibility. Moreover, those who help should avoid any conduct that could be misinterpreted by some inside or outside the congregation as morally questionable. Parents must not merely turn their children over to others for spiritual training. They must monitor the help given by companions and continue to teach their children themselves.
So the A part, how can spiritually minded brothers and sisters benefit young ones? Yeah.
Go out preaching with them and do other things together.
Yeah, that can be a good thing, right? So that's a nice thing. What else can be done? What might they need help in? Sister Olson?
Well, one thing that they might need help in is their assignments that they're given on the school. So that would be something that would be very helpful if a brother was the individual in the paragraph says, took him under his wing, really trying to help them.
What would ones that we're trying to help not want to do in this instance? Brother Holmes?
Oh, they certainly wouldn't want to be like trying to take over the responsibility, thinking they do best, and the old fogey parents don't really get it, and so I'm going to help them. And also, the paragraph mentions doing anything that could be misinterpreted as questionably moral and questionable, such as maybe spending too much time with them in certain circumstances. I mean, that's a real balancing act I'm talking about here, and it's not an easy thing to do. It has to be monitored.
Yeah. What does the picture help us to appreciate as well? That it is always a good thing in regards to that. Sister May?
There are so many things that our kids hear us say, no, you can't go to prom or this or that. So by providing activities that are well supervised and with good witnesses, they can have good friends, and then they don't feel like they're missing anything, and they can be built up.
And that helps the parents to do that as well. In this situation here, what is Sister Olson?
It really helps them to continue to monitor the situation, and they're encouraged by the Upbuilding Association also.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so the B part asks, what must parents continue to do? Touched on it a little bit, but
the responsibility of training their children and monitor the help that others offer their children.
Good. Proverbs 27:17 brings out what in regards to this situation too? That's a nice reminder there. Parents just want to do what for their children? Brother Skinner?
Points out sharpens, so that's what we want to do. That's what we like to do with our brothers, but also like to do with the children.
Yes, help them keep spiritually strong there. Very nice. Let's continue with number 20, last paragraph.
Parents, pray to Jehovah for help and try your best. Put your child's friendship with Jehovah ahead of your own interests. Do whatever you can to ensure that God's word reaches your child's heart. Never stop believing that your child can become a fine servant of Jehovah. When your children follow God's word and your good example, you will feel as the Apostle John did about his spiritual children. No greater joy do I have than this, that I should hear that my children go on walking in the truth.
So how can parents help their children to become fine servants of Jehovah? Abraham?
Put your child's friendship with Jehovah have your own interest.
Yes, very true. Let's go to 2 Chronicles 15:7. Sister Olson, Keys.
But you be strong and do not become discouraged, for your activity will be rewarded.
So in this situation that we're talking about with these parents and the children that are in this situation, how do they have to be? What disposition do they have to have in this situation in order for it to work? Sister Nickerson.
The scripture says, don't get discouraged. So there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. Sometimes things may work, and sometimes you might need to make a change or adjustment. So it reminds us that you're not on your own. You still have the elders you can go to for suggestion. Of course, praying to Jehovah and just keep trying your best.
And in most instances, what happens in that verse that brings out? When the hard work is put in, the sacrifice is made. Sister Ayala?
At the end of the verse, it says your activity will be rewarded. So we can be sure if we put that effort in, then it will most likely turn out well.
Yep, very true. Good. Yep. So just like our theme verse brought out, the children go on walking in the truth. And so what a blessing that is to parents and all alike that help them in that situation. Let's go back to our review questions to finish up. How can parents set a good example for their children? Brother Stein, what's that?
By staying spiritually busy and by speaking about the truth often.
Yes, very true. Big impact there. How can family heads decide which language congregation the family will attend? Sister Christina Olson.
By observing their children and seeing which language they best can understand better.
Yeah, that's good. And how can others help immigrant parents and their children? Some ways there. Sister Olson.
And I associate with them spiritually, and also at other times just for entertainment, and help them with their assignments in the congregation, or just be there to be positive.
Good. Yeah, so a lot of good reminders in case we're in this situation. It mentions earlier in the article there, over 240 million people live outside the land of their birth, and so it is a situation that Jehovah's organization goes through. But what kind of reminders Jehovah gives to those that are in this situation to help them spiritually stay strong. So very nicely done. Thank you for your comments this morning. Thank Brother Miller for reading for us and Brother Olson for giving join us. Our good talk this morning. We'll ask him to say our concluding prayer. We'll have a meeting for field service off to the side for those who can go out in about 20 minutes or so. And let's finish up with our song, song number 133. Worship Jehovah during your youth, Psalm 133.
Our Father Jehovah, we thank you so much for our meeting that you've given to us today. We really appreciate the opportunity that we have to learn more about you. We know that as days go by, we can continue to develop that relationship with you, take in more accurate knowledge about you and your purposes. So we really appreciate the spiritual food that you give to us, especially in these last days. We appreciate the organization that we have as well as our brothers and sisters who we love. Please help us always to treat them well, to look out for their best interests. Please be with us as we go out into Satan's world. After the meeting, help us to always do things that reflect well on your name, and help us to use every opportunity we have to talk to others about you. So we thank you for everything you do for us, and we praise things in Jesus' name.
Hey, Joe. How you doing? Huh?
Did you enjoy the meeting? Yeah. Oh, I was back there at the same time as Silas, his molars are coming in. He's just been a mess pot. I babysat him last week. And you just bounce him up and down, and he's just fuzzy. I thought you might be worried. Mandy actually doesn't even believe in spanking at all.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, to put your first. She's actually one of my best friends, so we spend a lot of time together, and yeah. That's one of the reasons, yeah. She doesn't believe in even like a squat, so a lot of times they're just fuzzy during the meeting or they just have energy. So she walked him outside for a little bit and just bounced him in the back, tried to show him a video on her iPad, and he was still just a little cranky. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, they're really good parents. Yeah. No, I understand. You've had past experiences.
Yeah. I've seen that happen.
Yeah. No, she's really, really patient with them. And like I said, I babysat them and I just spoiled them all day and gave them all my attention, and he was still just like, yeah, the molars are the worst. I had one of my wisdom teeth pop up because I have a floating molar that I need to get removed. And I was like, I feel so bad for Silas. Like, I'm an adult and I know what's going on, and it still made me cranky, let alone if I'm a baby. Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't want me to let go of her. She doesn't want to. You're such a good big sister.
What was the reference that you had to make?
I have to check. For which one? Huh? For which part?
The first. It's the only reference you made.
That was in. I hope it's on this.
It's in the Wake article. You quoted in the Wake article.
Yeah, it was based on the scripture. I didn't write down the article because it was just from the word. like I looked up one of the scriptures on the library, and it had an awake on it that was tied into it, but I didn't write it down. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
It's always good to check references.
Yeah, I know. It's like a lot of times, like on those, like on these outlines, they give you scriptures and kind of points they want you to hit, like you know. But like they kind of leave it open-ended. Like there's references for some they want especially, and then some like when it just has a scripture, I'll look up the library, and when you type in that scripture, it brings up like tons of different references. So sometimes it's like I'll take that one. That's why it's all out of there. So yeah, I guess I should have wrote that down. If I come across it, if I come across it, I'll let you know. Because it was, I don't know, it's really good on my part just because it's kind of hard to dealt with everybody and like, you know, with him being perfect, it would have been easier for him to kind of take shots at everybody and with us being definitely imperfect. We just kind of made a nice parallel that he treated them so well. And they didn't technically deserve it, you know?
And also, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Right, yep.
No one comes to the Father except for me. So, yeah, it's one of those things that they understood.
Right, and that's why people were drawn to him so much too, because he treated them so well too. So, yeah, but if I come across it, because I know I've got a few sheets that I printed off, and then I just took parts of it and wrote it in, you know what I mean? So I didn't have like a pile of papers up there, you know, otherwise I'd be like, all right, so you're around here somewhere.
Organization.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for it if I see it.
It's worth it. Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. I think it was a really good time when my mom had them. We never argued. It was more like another mom or really close aunties.
I did not
That wasn't a good apartment.
Thanks. You always kind of fight allergies, don't you?
No child screams like that because of a molar. Just saying. I can't prove it. But that's the end of that.